Hello everyone. So today we are going to start next chapter of Lakshmikant Politics, that is chapter number 3, Silent Features of the Constitution, and it is its part 1. Okay, so let us start. Silent feature of the Constitution. First, we're going to read the introduction, that is the Indian Constitution is unique and in its contents and spirits. Indian Constitution is unique in its contents and spirits. Though borrowed from almost every constitution of the world, the Constitution of India has several silent features that distinguish it from the constitution of other countries. Almost borrowed from every constitution of the world, but it have several features that make it different from other countries. It should be noted at the outset that the number of original features of the constitution as adopted in 1949 have undergone a substantial change on account of several amendments, particularly 7th, 42, 44th, 73rd, 74th and 97th amendments. So there were change in these amendments. In fact, the 42 Amendment Act in 1976 is known as mini constitution due to the importance and large number of changes made by it in various parts of constitution. So the constitution number 42 or amendment number 42, which was made in 1976, is also known as mini constitution because of it is very important. And however, in the Keshavananda Bharti case in 1973, the Supreme Court ruled that the constituent power of Parliament under Article 368 does not enable it to alter the basic structure of the Constitution. Now, the silent feature of the Constitution. The silent feature of Constitution as it stands today are as follows. First, it is lengthiest written Constitution. Constitution are classified into written like an American Constitution or unwritten like a British Constitution. So American Constitution is written like the Indian one or unwritten like the British Constitution. The Constitution of India is the lengthiest in all the written constitution of the world. It is very comprehensive, elaborate and detailed document. Originally in 1949, the Constitution contained a permeable 395 articles divided into 22 parts. So in 1949, our constitution contained of 395 articles that were divided into 22 parts and 8 schedules. Presently in 2016, it is saying about 2016, it consists of permeable about 465 articles that were divided into 25 parts and 12 schedules. The various amendments carried out since 1951 have deleted about 20 articles and one part 7 and added about 90 articles 4 part and 4 schedules. No other constitution in the world had so many articles and schedules. Four factors have contributed to the elephantine size of our constitution. They are now four factors that have contributed to this much big size of our constitution. They are: first, geographical factor, that is the vastness of the country and its diversity. Our diversity of our country is vast, and our country itself is a vast. So second is historical factors, that is example, the influence of Government of India Act of 1935 which was bulky. Third, single constitution for both the center and state. So we have the single constitution for both center and state except Jammu and Kashmir. Jammu and Kashmir have their own constitution. And fourth, dominance of legal luminaries in the Constituent Assembly. The Constitution contains not only the fundamental principles of governance but also detailed administrative preferences. Further, those matters which in the other modern democratic countries have been left to the ordinary legislation and established political convention have also been included in the constitutional document itself in India. Second is drawn from various sources. So, the Constitution of India has borrowed most of its provisions from the constitutions of various other countries as well as from the Government of India Act of 1935. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar proudly acclaimed that the Constitution of India has been framed after ransacking all the non-constitution of the world. So, the Constitution of India was formed after knowing all the constitution of the world. The structural part of constitution is too large extent is to a large extent derived from a Government of India Act of 1935. The philosophical part of the Constitution, okay, what we learn from this is that the Government of India Act of 1935 has also played an important role in our constitution making. Now, the philosophical part of the Constitution, the fundamental rights and the directive principles of a state policy derived their inspiration from the American and Irish constitution respectively. The political part of constitution, that is the principle of cabinet government and the relations between executive and legislature, has been largely drawn from British constitution. So the political part, that is for cabinet government and relation between executive and legislature, that part of our constitution is derived from the British constitution. Other provinces of constitution have been drawn from the constitutions of Canada, Australia, Germany, USSR, now Russia, France, South Africa, Japan, and so on. The most profound influence and material source of the Constitution is Government of India Act of 1935. The federal scheme, judiciary, governors, emergency power, the Public Service Commission, and most of the administrative details are drawn from this act. More than half of the provinces of Constitution are identical or bear a close resemblance to the Act of 1935. So 1935 have played a very important role in the making of our constitution. Most of part of our constitution is derived from that act. Third is blend of rigidity and flexibility. Constitution are also classified into rigid and flexible. A rigid constitution is that requires a special procedure for its amendment, as for example the American constitution. So rigid constitution requires a special procedure, that is American constitution. And a flexible constitution on the other hand is the one that can be amended in the same manner as the ordinary laws are made, as for example the British constitution. So the American constitution is rigid and the British constitution is flexible, and the rigid constitution means it requires a special procedure for its amendment, but a flexible constitution does not need a special procedure. It just can be amended in the same manner the laws are amended. The Constitution of India is neither rigid nor flexible, but a synthesis of both. Article 368 provides for the two types of amendments. Some provisional can be amended by a special majority of parliament, that is a two-third majority of member of each house present and voting, and a majority that is more than 50% of the total membership of each house. So India, the Constitution of India is not rigid, neither the flexible one, but it is in the synthesis of a both. First, it says that some provisions can be amended by a majority of parliament, and some other provinces can be amended just by a special majority of parliament and with ratification of half of the total seats. At the same time, some provisions of the Constitution can be amended by a simple majority of parliament in the manner of ordinary legislature process. Notably, these amendments do not come under 365 article. Fourth is federal system with unitary bias. The Constitution of India establishes a federal system of government. It contains all the usual features of the federation, that is two government, division of powers, written constitution, supremacy of constitution, rigidity of constitution, independent judiciary, and bicameralism. So the Constitution of India is a federal system and it contains all the usual features of federation. However, the Indian Constitution also contains a large number of unitary or non-federal features, that is a strong center, a single constitution, single citizenship, flexibility of constitution, integrated judiciary, appointment of a state governor by the center, all Indian service emergency provisions, and so on. So Indian Constitution is also contain a large number of unitary systems or unitary features. Moreover, the term federation has now been used in the Constitution. Article 1, on the other hand, describes India as the union of states. India is a union of states, which implies two things. That is, Indian federation is not the result of on an agreement by the states, and second, no state had the right to succeed from the federation. So the Constitution of India, in the Constitution of India, it describes in the Article 1 as India is a union of states. That is, Indian Federation is not a result of agreement of state, and on the other side it says that no state has the right to succeed from the federation. Hence, the Indian constitution has been variously described as federal in form but unitary in spirit. Quasi federal means half federal because it is federal in the form but unitary in spirit by Casey. Where are Bargaining Federalism by Morris Jones, Cooperative Federalism by Grenville Austin, and Federation with a centralizing tendency by Ivor Jennings, and so on. So it was the names given to our constitution by some men. Fifth is parliamentary form of government. The Constitution of India has opted for the British parliamentary system of the government rather than American presidential system of government. So the Constitution of India has adopted British parliamentary system rather than American. The parliamentary system is based on principle of cooperation and coordination between the legislative and executive organs, while the presidential system is based on doctrine of separation of powers between the two organs. So the parliament system of India is based on the power of cooperation and coordination between the legislative and executive organs. And the parliamentary system is also known as Westminster model of government, responsible government, and cabinet government. The constitution established the parliamentary system not only at the center but also in the states. So, the Constitution of India has a parliamentary system at the central level and also at the state level. The features of parliamentary government are presence of nominal and real executives and majority party will rule. Right? Now, C is collective responsibility of the executive to the legislature, membership of minister in the legislature, leadership of prime minister or the chief minister, and dissolution of the lower house, that is Lok Sabha or assembly. Even though the Indian parliamentary system is largely based on the British pattern, there are some fundamental differences between the two. And they are, for example, the Indian parliament is not a sovereign body. Indian parliament is not a sovereign body like the British parliament. Further, the Indian state has an elected head, that is republic, while the British state has hereditary head, that is monarchy. So Indian parliamentary is largely based on British pattern, but the differences are that Indian parliament is sovereign and the unlike the British parliament, British parliament is hereditary. Means Indian we elect as a republic, and in British it is monarchy. In a parliamentary system, whether in India or Britain, the role of prime minister has become so significant and crucial that the political scientists like to call it as prime ministerial government. Synthesis of parliamentary sovereignty and judiciary supremacy. The doctrine of sovereignty of parliament is associated with the British parliament, while the principle of judiciary with the Americans. So sovereignty of parliament is associated with the British, and the principle of judicial supremacy is associated with the American Supreme Court. Just as the Indian parliamentary system differs from the British, the scope of judicially review power of Supreme Court in India is narrower than that what exists in US. It is because the American Constitution provide for due process of law against that of procedure established by law contained in Indian Constitution of Article 21. Therefore, the framers of Indian Constitution have preferred a proper synthesis between the British principle of parliamentary sovereignty and the American principle of judicial supremacy. So, the Indian Constitution is just the mix-up of British principle of parliamentary sovereignty and American principle of judicial supremacy. The Supreme Court, as on the other hand, can declare the parliamentary laws as unconstitutional, though its powers of judicial reviews. The parliament, on the other hand, can amend the major portion of constitution, though through its constituent power. And the seventh is integrated and independent judiciary. The Indian constitution established a judicial system that is integrated as well as independent. So our Indian constitution is that established a judicial system that is integrated as well as independent. The Supreme Court stands at the top of integrated judicial system. The Supreme Court is at the top of judicial system in the country. Below it there are high courts at the state levels. Under a high court there is hierarchy of subordinate courts, that is district court and other lower courts. A single system of court enforces both the central laws as well as the state laws, unlike in USA, where the federal laws are enforced by the federal judiciary and the state laws are enforced by the state. Means in India, a single system of court enforces both the central as well as state, but in US, the federal just do the federal judiciary and the state enforce the state judiciary. The Supreme Court is a federal court, the highest court of appeal, the guarantor of the fundamental rights of the citizen and the guardian of the constitution. Hence, the constitution has made various provisions to ensure its independency, security of tenure of the judges, fixed service conditions for the judges, all the expenses of the Supreme Court charged on the Consolidated Fund of India, prohibition on discussion on the conduct of judges in the legislature, ban on practice after retirement, power to punish for its contempt vested in Supreme Court, separation of the judiciary from the executive, and so on. So the Supreme Court is the highest or the federal court in the constitution. So it has several provinces to ensure its independency. Now, the eighth is fundamental rights. Part 3 of the Indian Constitution guarantees 6 fundamental rights to the citizen. They are right to equality, that is in Article 14 to 18, right to equality. B. Right to freedom, that is in Article 9 to 12. C. Right to exploitation, Article 23, 24. Right to freedom of religion, Article 25, 28. Cultural and educational rights, Article 29, 30. Rights to constitutional remedies, Article 32. So these are some fundamental rights that are given to everyone. The fundamental rights are meant for promoting the idea of political democracy. They operate as limitations on the tyranny of the executive and arbitrary laws of the legislature. They are just justiciable in nature, that is, they are enforceable by the courts for their violation. So they are justiciable because they are enforceable by the courts. The aggrieved person can directly go to the Supreme Court, which can issue the writs of habeas corpus, mandamus, prohibition, certiorari, and quo warranto for the restoration of his rights. However, the fundamental rights are not absolutely and subject to reasonable restrictions. Further, they are not sacrosanct and can be curtailable or repealed by the Parliament through the Constitution Amendment Act. They can also be suspended during the operation of national emergency, except the right guaranteed by Article 20 and 21. And what was that? Let us see the right that was granted in Article 2021, that is not the Article 2021, that is not present, or that is not come under that some fundamental rights. So ninth is directive principle of state policy. According to Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the directive principle of state policy is a novel feature of the Indian Constitution. They are enumerated in Part 4 of the Constitution. They can be classified into 3 broad categories, that is socialistic, Gandhian, and liberal intellectual. The directive principles are meant for promoting the idea of social and economic democracy. They seek to establish a welfare state in India. However, unlike the fundamental rights, the directives are non-justiciable. So the directives are not justiciable in nature, that is, they are not enforceable by the courts for their violation. Yet the Constitution itself declares that these principles are fundamental in the governance of the country, and it shall be the duty of a state to apply these principles in making laws. Hence, they impose a moral obligation on the state authorities for their application, but the real force, that is sanction behind them, is political, that is public opinion. So there are some directive principles which are not directly enforceable by the courts for their violation, so they are non-justiciable, and yet it is just the duty of state to apply these principles while making the laws, but the real force behind them is political, that is public opinion. In the Minerva Mills case of 1980, the Supreme Court held that the Indian Constitution is founded on the bedrock of balance between the fundamental rights and directive principles. Now, the 10th is fundamental duties. The original constitution did not provide the fundamental duties of citizen. They were added during the operation of internal emergency in 1975 to 77 by the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act of 1976 on the recommendation of Swaran Singh Committee. The 86th Constitutional Amendment Act of 2002 added one more fundamental duty. So these fundamental duties were not initially the part of constitution, but they were added as an internal emergency by the 42nd Constitutional Amendment in 1976. The part 4 of a constitution, which consists of only one article. So part 4a just consists of only one article, that is 51a, specifies 11 fundamental duties to respect the constitution, national flag. So we have to respect the constitution, the national flag, the national anthem, and to protect the sovereignty, unity and integrity, to promote the spirit of common brotherhood among the people, to preserve the rich heritage of our composite culture, and so on. So there were some 11 fundamental duties. The fundamental duties serve as reminder to the citizen while enjoying their rights that they have also to be quite conscious of duties they owe to their country, their society and to their fellow citizens. However, like the directive principle, the duties are non-justiciable in nature. A secular state. The Constitution of India stands for a secular state, hence, it does not uphold any particular religion as the official religion of Indian state. The following provision of the Constitution reveals the secular character of the Indian state. The term secular was added to the preamble of the Indian Constitution by 42 Constitutional Amendment Act of 1976. The preamble secure to all citizens of India liberty of belief, faith and worship. They can believe any god, they can worship any god. The state shall not deny to any person equality. So all the persons are equal before the law or equal protection of the laws. The state shall not discriminate against any citizen on the ground of religion. So we cannot discriminate anyone on the basis of religion. Equality of opportunity for all citizens in matter of public employment. All the citizens should be given equal opportunity in the public employment. All persons are equally entitled to freedom of conscience and the right to freely profess, practice and propagate any religion. So they can just propagate any religion they want. They are free to profess, practice and propagate any religion. Every religious denomination or any of its sections shall have the right to manage its religious affairs. No person shall be compelled to pay any taxes for the promotion of particular religion. So you can promote any of the religion you want. No religious instruction shall be provided in any educational institute maintained by the state. So there should be no any religion instructions. Any section of the citizen shall have the right to conserve its distinct language, script and culture. So any section, they just have the rights to conserve its distinct language, its script and this culture. All minorities shall have the right to establish the administer educational institute of their choice. So all the minorities can make or establish any educational institute of their choice, and the state shall endeavor to secure for all the citizens a uniform civil code. The Western concept of secularism connotes a complete separation between religion and the state. This negative concept of secularism is incapable in the Indian situation where a society is multi-religious. Hence, the Indian Constitution embodies the positive concept of secularism, that is, they give equal respect to all religions and protect all the religions equally. Moreover, the Constitution has been abolished the old system of communal representation, that is, reservation of seats in legislature on the basis of religion. However, it provides the temporary reservation of seats for the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe to ensure adequate representation of them. 12th is universal adult franchise. The Indian Constitution adopt universal adult franchise as the basis of election to the Lok Sabha and the state legislature assembly. Every citizen who is not less than 18 years of age has a right to vote. Means everyone who is above the 18 years have the right to vote without any discrimination of caste, race, religion, sex, literacy, wealth, and so on. The voting age was reduced to 18 years from 21 years in 1989. So till 1989 the voting age was 21 years by the 61st Constitutional Amendment Act of 1988. The introduction of universal adult franchise by the constitution maker was a bold experiment and highly remarkable in view of vast size of the country, its huge population, high poverty, social inequality, and overwhelming illiteracy. Universal adult franchise makes democracy broad based, enhance the self respect and prestige of the common people, upholds the principle of equality, enables the minorities to protect their interests, and open up new hopes and vistas for the weaker sections. 13 is a single citizenship. Though the Indian constitution is federal and emphasizes a dual policy, means central and state, it provides only for a single citizenship, that is the Indian citizenship. In countries like USA, on the other hand, each person is not only a citizen of USA but also the citizen of particular state which to which he belongs. Thus, it owes the allegiance to both and enjoys dual sets of right, one conferred by the national government and other by the state government. In India, all the citizens, irrespective of the state in which they are born or reside, enjoy the same political and civil rights of citizenship all over the country. No discrimination is made between them, excepting in few cases like tribal areas, Jammu Kashmir, and so on. So in India, if anyone is born in any state, there is no discrimination, and all are given the same rights on the basis of the national citizenship, despite the constitutional provinces for a single citizenship and uniform rights. All the people, India has been witnessing the communal riots, class conflicts, caste wars, linguistic clashes, and ethnic disputes. This means that the cherished goal of the constitutional maker to build an united and integrated nation has not been fully realized. 14th is independent bodies. The Indian constitution not only provide for legislative, executive, and judicial organ of the government, central and state, but also establish certain independent bodies. They are envisaged by the constitution as a bulwarks for the democratic system of government, and they are: first is election commission to ensure free and fair elections to the parliament, the state legislature, the office of president of India, and the office of vice president of India. B is comptroller and auditor general of India to audit the accounts of the central and state government. He acts as the guardian of public purse and comments on the legality and prosperity of government expenditure. Third is Union Public Service Commission UPSC to conduct examination for requirement of all Indian service and higher central service as and to advise the president on the disciplinary matters. Fourth is the State Public Service Commission SPSC in every state to conduct examination for requirement to the state service and to advise the governor on disciplinary matters. Now, the constitution ensures the independence of these bodies through various provisions like security of tenure, fixed service condition, expenses being charged on the consolidated fund of India, and so on. Now, last page for today is 15th is emergency provinces. The Indian constitution contains elaborate emergency provinces to enable the president to meet any extraordinary situation effectively. That is, the rationality behind the incorporate of these provisions is to safeguard the sovereignty, unity, integrity, and security, the democratic political system, and the constitution. So the constitution envisages three types of emergency, that are: first is national emergency on the ground of war. So the first can be the national emergency in the ground of war or external aggression or armed rebellion, that was in Article 352. Second is state emergency, that is president's rule on the ground of failure of constitutional machinery in the states, Article 356, or the failure to comply with the direction of center, Article 365. and financial emergency on the ground to threat to the financial stability or credit of India. Article 360. During an emergency, the central government become all powerful and the state go on to the total control of the center. It converts the federal structure into unitary one without a formal amendment of the constitution. This kind of transformation of the political system from federal during normal times to unitary during emergency is a unique feature of Indian constitution. 16th is three-tier government. Originally, the Indian constitution, like any other federal constitution, provided for a dual policy contained provisions with regard to the organization and powers of the center and state. Later, 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendments Act of 1992 have added three tier of the government, that is local, which is not found in any other constitution of the world. The 73rd Amendment Act of 1992 gave constitutional recognition to the panchayats, local government, by adding a new Part 9 and a new Schedule 11 to the Constitution. Similarly, the 74th Amendment Act of 1992 gave constitutional recognition to the municipalities, means urban local governments, by adding a new Part 9A. Sorry, that was also that new Part 9, and the new part is 9A, and a new Schedule 12 to the Constitution. So that is all for today. Thank you for the watching. We will complete this chapter in the part 2 or maybe maximum part 3. We will start the part 2 tomorrow. Thank you for watching. Please do like the video, and if you have any doubts or suggestions, feel free to write in the comment. Open to all the comments, and subscribe to the channel. Press the bell icon. I don't know how to do a bell. Just press the bell icon, and the Telegram channel link is in the description. Go and check it out. Thank you.